From Boca Raton, Florida, Rabbis Efrem Goldberg, Philip Moskowitz, and Josh Brody are taking you behind the Bima. The BRS rabbis schmooze about contemporary issues and talk to special guests who give a behind-the-scenes look at how they got to where they are and what keeps them going. Welcome to Behind the Bima.
Good evening. It's 9 p.m. Wednesday night. I am Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, joined by my dear colleagues and friends, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz and Rabbi Josh Brody. And we're here to take you
behind the Bima.
We are here to take you behind the Bima, a very exciting behind the Bima. We have a very prominent guest tonight, Sheryl Sandberg, the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, who has herself had an illustrious career, education, today's involved in tremendous philanthropy, and is a proud Jew. And a fascinating conversation in store for you. Very excited to bring you that. But first, a special thank you to our sponsors, J. Feder Jewelers. Not first time sponsoring, J. Feder Jewelers. Yisrael Dvorah Feder, thank you so much for your generosity. Not only big fans of Behind the Bima, but Boca Raton Synagogue. They are the sponsors of the Tshuva campaign this year at BRS. We've had an enormous amount of programming, and it's all brought to you by J. Feder Jewelers. So if you're in the market for a beautiful piece of jewelry, they'll work with you. Highly recommend them, other than our wives. Hopefully you're not listening. And if you are, recommend it to other people. But for others, it's a beautiful way to celebrate a milestone. They'll work with you. They'll give you a great deal. It's an amazing place. Very big thank you to Yisrael and Dvorah Feder, J. Feder Jewelers. Also, a huge thank you. Check out, boys, what we have here.
Got it.
Wow.
My mom said, she said, if you could get me that for my birthday, you don't have to give me anything else. That's it. Just the Behind the Bima magnet.
You're going to get away easy. Alana Landau of Alana Landau Designs is enormously talented. She came up with this new logo, Behind the Bima. It's her creativity, but she didn't stop there. She said, I made the new logo. Let's put it on some swag and get it out there. So she produced these beautiful car magnets. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay holy. Behind the Bima. Live Wednesdays, 9 p.m. And they're on cars so far all over Boca. Somebody said to me, they asked me for one, they put it on their car, and the next day they told me that they were driving and they made an illegal U-turn. And they had no problem with making the illegal U-turn, but as they were making it, they all of a sudden realized, wait, I've got a Behind the Bima magnet on my car. Now, the way I drive doesn't only reflect on me, now the way I drive reflects on Behind the Bima as well. So if you would like to put it on your car and then drive more cautiously and carefully, we will be getting those out. So Alana Landa did an amazing job on our logo. She did a great job on the magnet. She is producing hats and shirts, some other exciting swag as well. We'll be able to share with our sponsors and on occasion with our listeners. Check her out. Look for her online at Alana Landau Designs. But you see how talented she is because the proof is in the pudding, the new logo right there. Gentlemen, how was your week? We are in a high-pressured week. The countdown has not only begun, the countdown is nearing an end. What's going on?
How are you guys dealing with this? You guys have to write all these big drushes. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's the drushas, it's the figuring out the logistics for the holidays. As you just said, we just had a Yom Norai meeting with some of our volunteers, our Gabayim, our Bali Tfila. And as you pointed out, who would have thunk a year later we would still be going through this? And in many ways, this has been logistically more difficult for us than it was last year. And that's definitely taking up a lot of our time.
It is. It's complicated. We're trying to stay updated as things can change and evolve and pivot and meet diverse needs that are reasonable needs and simply do the best that we can. So wherever you are and whatever shul you daven in, have some pity on your rabbis and lay leadership because they're doing the best that they can in complicated and changing times. I want to come back to a conversation we had last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked about the Uber rating. First of all, after that episode, I don't know about you guys, I got a bunch of people texting me their Uber rating. People who had no idea that everyone thinks they're rating their driver. They don't realize their driver's rating them. So all these people who are following the show took out their phone or during the show probably, looked up their Uber rating. Feel free if you want to flex right now in the comments. We'd love to hear from you live during the show. We are coming to you live Wednesday night. And feel free to put in your Uber rating. We'll see maybe which listener has the highest Uber rating. And maybe we'll send you a car magnet. So people checked their Uber rating. They didn't even realize they had it. So I got a text. I know out of the three of us, you're still 4.93. You're number one. I'm number two. And Rabbi Moskowitz,
I'm not even trying. I
won't say what place he's in. So I got a text from somebody after the last show. And this is what they write. Do you really believe it's appropriate to give a false reading to the Uber driver when others may rely upon that rating? In other words, we spoke about the fact that we want a good rating, so we're rating all of our drivers with a 5-star. And also we told the story how the woman who picked us up and her air conditioning was broken, and we had a pretty miserable experience, but we thought, what if she's like a single mom? She's struggling to put food on the table. She's a victim of domestic violence. We made up a whole story in our head of this woman, and we pitied her. So we said, you know what? It didn't deserve 1 star, but we'll give it 5 because who knows? So this is another perspective on that conversation. Somebody who texts and says, well, what about that next person who's looking at that rating and is going to mold their expectation based on your rating? Do we have a responsibility to the next passenger? What say you?
I think it's interesting because a lot of the Uber drivers that I've taken rides with, they're not the greatest drivers, but no one's had below like a 4.8 or a 4.85. So I'm wondering, like, I've never seen an Uber driver with a 3 or a 2. Does that do you get rejected? Are you out of the system?
You don't think?
I think there's
move.
Yeah, no, they when we spoke to a driver about this, they have like an algorithm where if you have a low rating, you don't get picked up as much by the people looking for rides. To me, there's a difference, right? Now, there's a guy or a woman who's generally a good driver. Maybe something was a little bit off. You're going to give her a 4 or 3 point. I get that. Then you give the higher rating. If someone does something legitimately dangerous, there's something that's unsafe, then it's worthy of a low rating. That's when I don't have Rahmanas. But average person trying hard, doing their best, you give them the good rating.
It's funny. I'm just thinking now, what would we rate each other if we were in the cars? Do some of us think the other ones are driving a little carelessly?
Well, you two are like the opposite, polar opposites.
Right.
Rabbi Goldberg got like thrown up in the front seat.
Let's ask our listeners. You've gotten to know us. You've gone behind the Bima with us now for a couple of years. For many, I think we're coming in on 60 episodes, maybe past that. So you've gotten to know us a little bit, even if you're not from Boca, and those who are from Boca certainly know us well. Out of the 3 of us, which would you predict would be the slowest driver? Which one? Would it be the heavy metal
rocker,
the rocker outreach rabbi? Which would it be? Write us in the comments again, waiting to hear from you what your Uber rating is, and check it out. So this past Motzei Shabbos, I was not here. It was very hard for me. I don't think I've ever not been here before. There was one time I took that mini sabbatical. I wasn't here before. This was the second time because we had a family bar mitzvah in New Jersey. My wife, our nephew, and Motzei Shabbos, I spoke in a community in Long Island. So I had to take an Uber from Passaic to Long Island, to West Hempstead. So first of all, I call the Uber, and this guy calls me. You reserve an Uber, and then all of a sudden you see Uber's calling you. You wonder why is he calling me? Like, I'm not at the airport. He can't find me. I'm at a house. I'm outside the house. What's the problem? So apparently when the driver has a pickup, they're not notified where they're going because they don't want Uber drivers who will decide, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. I don't want that distance. I don't want to cross that bridge. So they don't tell them that. So this guy called me and said, just want to confirm where you're going. So I was caught off guard. I'm like, I'm going to West Hempstead. He's like, okay, great. I'll be there in a minute. Next thing on my screen, it says,
canceled.
Driver canceled. Looking for a new driver. So anyway, I got a new driver and I'm sitting in the back seat and I was going to prepare the talk I was going to give on the ride. One of the reasons I took the Uber, but my driver, a lovely man from Nigeria, I don't know, he saw my yarmulke, my beard, I don't know what it was. He engaged me for 45 minutes for a Bible discussion about the priestly garments in Leviticus. And we had a fascinating discussion about the Bible with my Uber driver. So, I gave him 5 stars because it became a Torah mobile. It was really amazing. So I thought that was an interesting feedback. We thought we're doing the kind thing for the driver by giving the 5 stars, but somebody's saying, what about the next passenger? It's unkind if you're not giving an accurate description. We are going to bring Sheryl Sandberg on momentarily, really a special evening and special opportunity, but I'll bring up another topic, which we'll tease and come back to after our conversation with her. And that is Shabbos Shuvah Drasha. So we have planning meetings in May. Every year we've spoken about that before. We assess the year that was, we plan for the year that is ahead. And Rabbi Moskowitz, the whole staff joined him, but Rabbi Moskowitz really led the charge in saying, we created this global community. We're streaming so many of our classes. It's really important for our local members to remember that we care about them, that we have an intimate, close connection that's not shared with the whole world. So first of all, we have the beauty of something called Shabbos. We don't stream Shabbos. We don't stream Yontif. That is a purely local experience. And then the question was, well, what about Shabbos Shuvah? Are we going to go back to Shabbos afternoon, which is really magical in our community, not because of the speaker, but because of the crowd that comes and the energy they create?
Everyone together.
Or everyone's together, or stay Motzei Shabbos and stream it. So I was convinced at that meeting that we should keep it local. Let's make that statement. Let's be very clear that it's our local community who are the heart of our community. It's who we care about. It's our primary and principal commitment. And we're having this experience that's not going to be streamed. It's not going to be shared with others. It's private. And then, the corona numbers came up a little bit locally. People were concerned. They don't want to come back to classes. So the question became, what do the local people want? Because if the local people themselves, the BRS members themselves don't want it. So we sent out a survey last week asking our members what they prefer. Do they want the Shabbos Shuvah Drasha in person, Shabbos afternoon, old school, after Mincha, until Shabbos ends, in person, energy of being in a room, or stream it online afterwards? And after our interview, we'll share with you what the results were. But first, we have the privilege of welcoming Sheryl Sandberg, as we said, the Chief Operating Officer, the COO of Facebook, the founder of leanin.org. She's on the board of directors of Facebook, and she has a really, really impressive background, impressive resume. She grew up in South Florida, North Miami Beach High School, in fact, went to Harvard and worked as a research assistant at World Bank. She had an early career in politics. She was served under the United States Secretary of the Treasury under President Clinton, assisted in the Treasury's work in debt and others. And she joined Google. From Google, she was recruited to Facebook. And we know today she is at Facebook and has written books and is a great philanthropist and leads in so many ways. When we were able to arrange with Sheryl Sandberg to have the opportunity for this interview, we were unable to lock her down for 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night. You can imagine there wasn't a lot of flexibility because of her commitments. So we took whatever opportunity we could get. So this interview, we are live to you tonight, as we always are behind the Bima. The interview was recorded, and the interview is going to begin abruptly, because what happened was we met on screen to do the interview, and the conversation was so much fun. We said, we got to record this. Is it okay if we record this? So we're going to begin the interview right now. It starts abruptly in the middle of a sentence, only because the conversation was so great that we started recording right then. We hope you enjoy as much as we did, and we will be right back with you. Sheryl Sandberg.
Record this.
This is the most important part.
My mom made cholent, and I can't quite make that, but so.
You could.
Sandberg recipes are the greatest secret to get out. This makes this whole interview worth it.
There you
go. I'm gonna take your parents out. They'll still be able to hear us from.
I'm gonna mute. We'll move.
All right.
They muted themselves.
I'm all yours.
Before we even begin, I will thank your parents. First of all, it was a pleasure to meet them. They're so wonderful, and their help. Since you unabashedly said that they are the only reason you're doing it, I thought it was because of our high profile and this platform and behind the Bima, helping advance your career. But I guess it's for none of those reasons. So.
I turned 52 years old in 2 days, and I still know you do what your mom and dad say.
That's great.
Absolutely.
You do what your mom and dad say. I maybe get a few invitations to do things like this, but I generally kind of, do the best I can, but can't say yes. But as soon as mom and dad called me and were like, you need to do this, I say yes.
Well, when I was at an event with your parents, immediately I thought the fifth commandment of the 10 commandments is going to help us finally get Sheryl Sandberg on Behind the Bima. So we have the same, we think alike, and I'm glad it worked out.
So I don't want to show my total ignorance of the order of the commandments, but one is honor your father and mother, and that must be the fifth, right?
That is the fifth one. That is the fifth commandment, honor your parents. In fact, it's a famous question because the first 5 are supposed to be between us and God, and the second 5 between us and man. And the question everyone asks is, why is honor your parents among the first 5? Isn't that really between us, interpersonally, us and other people? And the answer is, when you honor your parents, you're honoring God. If you dishonor your parents, you're disrespecting God. They go as a group. They're the ones who created us. So we now have fulfilled the Dvar Torah part of our discussion Behind the Bima.
Well, I will say that everything I'm about to talk about stems from my parents and how important Judaism has been as I was raised, as I'm trying to raise my children. And so I am so grateful to be with all 3 of you. It's an honor to be with such esteemed rabbis, but even more of an honor to have my parents with us today. So.
No question about it. No question about it. And we may have to include this whole thing with your permission.
All of it. It's all yours. Anything you want.
Okay, perfect. So let's formally start by welcoming Sheryl Sandberg, of course. So what an honor and what a privilege. We are beyond grateful that you've dedicated some time to spend with us and with our audience to share about your background, your Jewishness, how it informs and inspires your life, and for us to be able to tap into your wisdom and the many contributions that you've made our world already. First of all, we have a lot in common. You grew up in North Miami Beach. I know you moved here as a young child and graduated here in North Miami Beach. And our parents have come to know each other socially, and their shared work and passion for Israel and for Hatzalah. And we all have Facebook accounts and use it to advance our teachings in the world. So among the many things we have in common. But first of all, thank you so much for being with us.
I'm honored to be with you, Rabbi Goldberg, Rabbi Moskowitz, Rabbi Brode. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Brody,
want to get that right. I'm honored to be with you. And as I just learned, I am fulfilling the fifth commandment because my parents told me to do this. And I'm going to be 52 in 2 days, and I still do. I'm a nice Jewish girl. I do whatever my parents tell me to do. So here we are, as we honor Adele and Joel Sandberg, my parents.
Absolutely. And a very happy upcoming birthday to you. So I want to start really with the conversation I had with your parents, which I think contributed to your honoring them by being with us tonight. And that is how your book, Option B, really changed my life. I'm sure people tell you things like that on a regular basis. It's not an exaggeration that when I read your book and marked it up and have included it in source sheets and classes that I've taught, it changed who I am as a person. Wow. It changed who I am as a rabbi, pastorally, try to help and support people around me. And it changed people that I've shared it with through my Torah teaching, trying to inspire them. So, go back to that sudden loss of your husband, Dave, of blessed memory, and the post that you shared on the occasion of his shloshim on Facebook, I remember then, had an enormous impact on me and so many others. But in the book, you talk about facing adversity, your endurance, your resiliency, and how in life sometimes you have to turn to option B. What messages do you have for our audience? Obviously, it's hard to summarize an entire book and a whole institute of teaching into how we can be better friends to people who are suffering or struggling around us, how rabbis and clergy and pastors can be better leaders, more sensitive. What I love about the book are the very practical, specific examples. One tiny one for our audience. I used to see people and say, how are you? With that face that you described, that nebuch, that sympathy, I'm so sorry, how are you? And I changed to say, how are you today? That little piece of advice transformed those conversations that we as rabbis do every day. So please share with us some of those fundamental messages.
Well, let me say how grateful I am and how touched I am that the book affected you this much. It's probably impossible to separate out my experience of losing my husband, the growth I tried to share from Judaism. So I didn't know when Dave died that the period of mourning for a spouse was 30 days. I thought the period of mourning in Judaism is a year. But what I learned, Rabbi J. Moses is kind of my personal friend and personal rabbi, from Rabbi Moses was actually it's a year for parents, siblings, children, but it's 30 days for a spouse. And this ends in this period of Shaloshim. And I'd never heard that word. And you pronounce it, I think, much more accurately than I do. But what happened to me is that, I felt like a ghost. I mean, people either looked by me, looked away from me. Before Dave died, I could walk in any room and talk to anyone. And then once Dave died, I could silence a room by just walking in. And people would say things like, how are you? You're like, well, not great. And I think what I learned is that, and I think Judaism teaches us this too, but you would know that better than I would, is that you want to acknowledge the pain and the suffering. So before Dave died, I thought if I walked up to someone, maybe the first time, I'm sorry for your loss, or you have cancer, how are you feeling? After that, I never mentioned it again because I didn't want to remind them. That's absurd. It's been over 7 years. If you walk up to me and say, I'm so sorry for your loss, I'm not like, oops, I forgot Dave died. You can't remind me I had this loss. I know that. And I know that every day. You're sitting next to someone at work who has cancer. You can't remind her she has cancer. She knows that. So when we find ways to acknowledge, when we say, not how are you, that's what everyone says, but how are you today? Just that word, you are acknowledging that someone's suffering. Adam Grant, who I wrote this book with, we talked about how there's a huge self-help section in every bookstore, but there's no help others section. We want our book to be in the help others section. So what can you do? Acknowledge. Kick every elephant out of every room. Say to someone, I know this completely sucks, but I'm here. Say we, not I. Don't say you're going to get through this. Say we are going to get through this. And just show up. Just show up. There's a beautiful story, I think, in our book of a woman whose child's teacher was in the hospital with her daughter having cancer. And, it's her child's teacher. She doesn't really know her that well. So she would never impose before, but then she read our book. So she bought a big stuffed animal. She texted the teacher. She said, I'm in the lobby of the hospital. I have a stuffed animal for your daughter. If you're up for a visit, I can run upstairs or I can just leave it here. The teacher texted back right away and said, come upstairs. She went upstairs. Sorry, I can't tell the story without crying. She went upstairs, handed this, I think, 5-year-old, the stuffed animal. The teacher's tears pouring down her face thinking, thank you. You're the only one who came today. I think when tragedy hits, people think you have to be best friends with the person from first grade to show up. We don't have enough of those to carry us through. Show up. Show up with a hug, show up with dinner. That's a very Jewish tradition. But acknowledge, and show up.
One of the other suggestions in the book that had a big impact on me, which I love, was, we tend to ask people, don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do. And who's ever going to reach out? No one wants to be in the position of being a taker. And I love the example, the very practical example you give that says, what do you not like on your pizza? I'm showing up with pizza night. Or how do you take a hamburger? I'm coming with a hamburger night. It's very practical advice of things that people can do. We incorporated it, and I've shared it with so many who have, and we owe really a debt of gratitude to you for that. Can you talk a little bit about your faith, the role that Judaism, a relationship with God, played in your resiliency and when you endured that tragic time in your life? And Mazel Tov, congratulations on your engagement to Tom. But in that tragic life, and all people go through ups and downs and difficult times, what did Judaism, what did faith mean for you as you confronted those challenges?
Yeah, so Dad, with apologies, I'm not sure I believed in God until Dave died. I did not believe in my father. If I would say that, would say, I'm not sitting next to you. The lightning's going to strike and I don't want it to strike me. So I'm not saying I didn't believe, but I wasn't sure. And, you don't think you would find deeper belief through complete tragedy because, someone, probably not an all-powerful being, but medical reasons, took one of the most magnificent men who ever lived off this planet at 47 years old. Which does not feel just, does not feel fair. But I think somehow through that, I found faith. And I think I found it because I had to. Because I had to feel connected to the experience that I'm not the only person who's lived through tragedy. Certainly our people have lived through it. Look at what's happening in Afghanistan right now. Look at what's happening around the world. Look at the tumultuous situation that still exists in Israel and the Middle East, where so many people die completely unnecessarily. I think in these moments of tragedy, you have to find something you can believe in. I think Judaism is good at a lot of things, but perhaps the best thing is how we handle death. Burying right away is just a blessing, because my experience, at least, is I was holding my breath until that burial, and we had some issues with an autopsy and all the stuff people have, but I knew that it was my religion that as soon as we could bury him, we did. And Dave was buried 3 days later. And, in some traditions, it can be months. So you have months of that. I think Shiva is beautiful. Your house just fills up with all the people who want to tell stories. And that one of the messages of Option B is, please don't disappear after Shiva, because that's when everyone is there. Or if you're not Jewish and you don't have Shiva, don't disappear after the first week. Everyone's there the first week, come back. But surrounding yourself. And the period of Sheloshim, I wrote that post about, here's 30 days. I'm supposed to stop mourning today. I'm not going to stop mourning, but I am going to share the things I learned. And I think I wrote this, but I felt that I grew 30 years. I aged 30 years in those 30 days. But those lessons are ones I carry forward. And the counterintuitive lesson is, and it's obvious, the obvious part is you find gratitude. The counterintuitive part is you find gratitude by thinking about what could have been worse. So just a few weeks after Dave died, my friend Adam, who I, again, eventually wrote this book with, said to me, it could be worse. And I was like, worse? Really? My husband just died suddenly, leaving me with 2 young children. Like, are you kidding? And he said, Dave could have had that cardiac arrhythmia driving your children. And in that moment, I realized I could have lost all 3 of them. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, my kids are alive. I'm fine. Now, 5 minutes before that, I didn't wake up thinking, yay, my kids are alive. I took that for granted. And I was focused on Dave's death. And you can't hang on to that, but counterintuitively, we often ask ourselves when things are hard, what could be worse? And that's how we find the gratitude to feel grateful for whatever we have left.
I want to get my colleagues in here, but I just want to thank you for being real and for letting yourself be emotional, even after this time, because I think that a lot of people have an impression. Such a high-profile person, the COO of Facebook, is corporate and distant and is plastic. And the fact that you are allowing us and our audience to see how genuine, how real, how authentic. Option B is not just a book, but clearly it reflects who you are. So thank you for allowing us in that way. Rabbi Moskowitz.
Yeah, I want to jump in. First of all, I want to echo what Rabbi Goldberg said and just express how much Option B touched me personally, having lost a parent at a somewhat young age of 20, and really relating and resonating a lot of what you spoke about with Shiva and resiliency and being there for other people. It touched me immensely. And again, I too shared in my teachings, and it made me a better person. So I want to thank you. I do want to pivot a little bit to a different topic, a very Jewish topic, and that's philanthropy, tzedakah. And, Rabbi Goldberg mentioned that the connection here was an event of United Hatzalah and your affiliation, your involvement with that. What drives your philanthropy? What inspires you to give back? You must get a gazillion offers and opportunities to give charitably around the world. What motivates you, and how does your Jewish values inspire that?
Well, the value of tzedakah obviously runs deep within our faith and runs deep within my home. My mother used to tell the story of her grandmother who had like a tzedakah can, I think, in the kitchen, and they were very poor. And when that times were good, they would say, oh, we have a little extra, let's put something in the tzedakah can. And when times were bad, they would say, oh, someone else has it worse than we do, let's put something in the tzedakah can. And so that's been a part of my upbringing. And now, I'm very dedicated. I follow my parents. I've become a donor to United Hatzalah. I'm a deep believer. I had an opportunity to visit and see what they did firsthand in Israel just 2 summers ago with my parents. I run my own foundation. We support women to form lean-in circles all over the world. We support Option B and grief groups. And we support a scholarship in my husband's name, the Goldie Scholar Program. We have these unbelievable kids in college who we're giving scholarships to and great summer jobs to help them along their way in his name and in his honor. And then I try to jump in when I think things are necessary. I do a lot of food. Tom and I do a lot of giving in the food security area domestically throughout California. We've jumped in a pretty big way for Afghanistan right now to try to get emergency aid through the IRC and CARE to the people who need it, and especially women there. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can do. And I'm fortunate I have a lot of opportunity to help, but that gives me a very big responsibility to help.
Wow. I noticed that as even you're speaking about it, your face lit up about the opportunities that you've had to give and to share and to better people's lives. What message would you give to other people about the joy of giving, about the thrill that's involved? Because, as rabbis, we're always involved in fundraising, and we're always talking to people about how they could be more charitable. And some people it comes more naturally, and some people it's a little bit more difficult. For anyone, no matter what their socioeconomic status is, as you said, if the times were good, if the times were bad, what message would you give to them about the joy that you experience when you're able to help another person?
Well, I might turn that back to you, right? You save one life, you save the world. Isn't that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to say it in Hebrew. I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to let you say it. Can you say it, the phrase?
It's anyone who saves one life. It's as if they save an entire world. It's found in the Talmud in a tractate called Sanhedrin.
Yeah. See, my parents' teaching coming through. Almost. I almost got it. But look, I think what really matters is that we find causes we're close to and stay involved. I try to teach my children, we don't just give our money, we give our time. So I'm a very active fundraiser and donor to the food bank here. But since my kids were little, we go to that food distribution every month. And it really brought itself home. The first time I took my son, he was like 6 years old. He was pretty good at math, and he really loved bananas. But he was only allowed to eat 1 banana a day because, you're only supposed to eat 1 banana a day. They're a little constipating for little boys. But the first time he went, he handed a bunch of bananas, 8 bananas to a family. And he realized they were 4. And on the way home, he said, Mom, I eat 30 bananas a month. And my sister eats 30 bananas. That's 60 bananas. And that family got 8. And it's for a month. And I said, yeah. And I think, we teach our children not just to give, but to really experience and really try to show up. My kids have grown up going to that food bank, and they know to greet everyone, and they know to say thank you for coming. When our clients, and we call them our guests, come to the food bank, we don't say, you're lucky to be here. We say, thank you for coming. So they've learned to grow up thanking other people for the opportunity to help. That's a pretty great thing.
That's amazing.
Feels better than an hour on the Xbox, as I always say.
Amazing.
Feels better. Longer lasting pleasure.
That's a great tagline for Tzedakah. That's
Exactly.
Amazing. And
there you go. I don't want to say Xbox. Feels better than an hour of video games. Let's not make it personal.
Right. So first of all, it's great because Facebook is the only social media that I spoke to my wife, my mom, my in-laws. Really, it's the only social media platform that we know how to use. And I want to thank you so much for being part of that experience. You mentioned food, and I'm just wondering, as we get closer and closer right now to the high holidays, what are your plans for the high holidays, and what are you anticipating for a new year?
So I have a new family. I have a fiance. I have 3 new children. So there are 5 kids, 7 of us. And this is, last year we tried to celebrate, but it was very lockdown COVID. So this time we're having some other families over for dinner. And as we were starting, I was trying to figure out what we were going to make for dinner and make it pretty traditional and pretty fun. But I think it's a really special time. I definitely have a deep feeling when the new year starts. We have a new opportunity. It's kind of nice that it coincides with the school year, roughly every year, because it's a new opportunity for, I hope, learning and growing and gratitude and appreciation and tzedakah.
Those are all phenomenal themes. You've been tremendously gracious with your time. I want to go behind the beam. I want to ask you a question that you're probably not asked in other interviews. This is not a Facebook conversation. You probably do that all day long, and we're not going there. But I want to ask, I know Facebook has begun some programs with clergy, with religious institutions, using it as a platform to get out wisdom, to get out messages. What would you tell us and our colleagues, rabbis, who want to take advantage of Facebook, not monetize it in any way necessarily, but want to take advantage of it to try to bring the Torah's timeless wisdom, the timeless teachings of our heritage to a broader platform, to reach more people? How could we do it more effectively? What could we do better? How could we get more friends, more followers? How could we be more effective with Facebook Live and some of the technology? What was the message of how we could use it better?
So in tragedy, there's often a silver lining. And I think that the huge tragedy, which is COVID, which is raging around the world, causing huge problems. I mean, we're in a relatively much better place, the United States, worse than we were, but so much better than so many places in the world. The silver lining is that it brings us together in other ways. So I have spoken to so many people who lead congregations or churches or mosques or temples of different kinds who fundamentally they believed their job as a religious leader was to get in front of their congregation or temple or mosque in person, once a week, 5 times a day, whatever it was, but it was an in-person activity. And that limited that opportunity to when people can show up in person. Once we all went to Zoom, and people began engaging when they were out of town. They could attend those services when they were out of town, and they could do it also at different time zones. And I think what I've heard from so many religious leaders, again, of all denominations, of all religions, is this opportunity to have a deeper and ongoing connection with people, even when you can't be in person. And so for me, as I think about Rosh Hashanah, we're probably still going to be a Zoom family for this Rosh Hashanah. I can find the very best rabbis all over the world. I could listen to your sermon. I can listen to your sermon. I don't live in Florida. Think about that as an opportunity to broaden. And we can also connect to our congregations and connect them to each other. So many temples, churches, mosques have really helped people in their area by coming together virtually. And so you can be always on. It can be deeply personal. You don't have to wait till Shabbat. It can be Facebook Live, but it can be taped. So if someone can't join live, they could join. And the thing I would say is, I would use the technology. I would think about using it not only in long snippets, but in short snippets. I think most rabbis out there will give a sermon, but what about 5 minutes of Torah a day? I don't have time for a sermon every day, but if you put out 5 minutes, I don't know if it's called the Devar Torah, but if it's the Devar Torah in 5 minutes, I would listen to that. Short, always on opportunity, bring people
You
in.
got it. Well, we're gonna have to friend you on Facebook so you could find our 5 minute
I will do
to
that.
listen to.
I will do
But
that.
it's interesting because I'll tell you that your technology and the gift of technology, which really got the world through COVID, our kids have been able to continue in school when they were shut down only because of technology, and we've continued to provide inspiration, teachings, wisdom, and fun. The whole genesis of this podcast began because with COVID, we missed our congregants. They missed us. They never see three rabbis unplugged, having fun, banter, just letting ourselves. And now the challenge is, you may not believe this, the technology, we're reaching so many people in so many far places. How do we pivot to go back to in person? There's a convenience to the technology that how do you remind people that there's an energy of being in a room together, that when you study and when you interact and when you connect and social, it's a social media platform. But, so much of the thesis of option B is the social interconnectedness, the energy that we exchange when we are in person. So any thoughts on pivoting back from online and the gift of online to back to the importance of being offline and the relationships we have there?
Well, a couple things. One is I think you can and should do both. The second is, I think people participate more both online and offline when there is more participation. So we tell people online, if you're trying to engage an audience online, react to some of the comments. Don't just put your comment. Don't put your post out there and ignore the comments. React to the comments. The Facebook groups that are the most successful are the ones that take ideas. The small businesses that actually use our services the best. I met with one recently. She makes soaps. She said she started asking her Facebook audience, what flavors or scents do you want? If she made the scents they suggested, they sold out immediately. And so I don't know what it means to get people more engaged in services. I don't know. I remember the interactive stuff that gets done as a kid. I think if you find ways to bring people in, but they're not just sitting, they're also interacting, you'll find there's more reason to show up. Because I think there's not that much difference if I'm sitting in a synagogue and listening to you give a sermon versus sitting in a synagogue, right? Or Zoom. But if I have an opportunity to participate that only happens in person, that might get me out of my chair and, into my car or to walk, if it's the holidays, to walk to the shul.
Wow, that's great. Again, you've been generous with your time. We're going to take advantage only for one more minute. Some lightning round questions. Favorite Jewish holiday?
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Favorite place that you visited in Israel?
I think the United Hatzalah office. It's
Wow.
remarkable. Eli Beer is.
Ellie Beer.
I was about to say Ellie Beer is going to clip that, and that is going to go viral. That will go viral.
It's inspiring. He is saving lives. He is working on peace. He is supporting women. He has Israeli women, Jewish women, Arab women out there together, saving lives together. It's inspiring.
He's doing great things, and I know your parents are instrumental, and I want to thank them for encouraging you to join us. It's really a special privilege and an honor for us to be together and to start a Facebook friendship that will go for many years to come. Next time you come to Florida on a visit, we welcome you to visit and stop by our synagogue. We'd love to see you. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your wisdom. We thank you for philanthropy, your leadership, and your hard work, and thank you for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
To all three of the rabbis. It was a real honor. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Have a wonderful year, a sweet year, a happy year, a healthy year, a year of only blessing and great things.
L'shana tova.
Wow.
Great conversation.
Amazing.
What struck you? What do you take away from that? It was so nice of her to give us her time and very insightful, intimidating a little bit, as have been many of our high profile and wonderfully accomplished guests. And we've had such diverse guests and tremendous rabbanim and women role models and people from all walks of life. What about this interview really struck you?
I love the beginning where you explained going into the interview how we always record because you never know what's going to happen. but there was just that banter, and she's just talking about her family making cholent for Rosh Hashanah. This is the head of Facebook. This is an incredible conversation. So interesting.
I agree. I thought it was a very genuine, natural conversation, which I obviously appreciated a lot. I loved everything. I mean, I loved her answer about the philanthropy, that it's better than an hour of Xbox, which she'll probably get sued for. But, it's exactly what we're trying to teach our children, that there's a thrill in giving. It's much more exciting than getting. I also found the conversation at the end, and I know this is what gives me the lead into the conversation we had earlier, but the convenience of technology versus the energy of being in a room. And I found it very interesting when she spoke about how the most successful platforms are those where they're interactive, where you're participating. And obviously it's a little bit more challenging in an Orthodox shul, but definitely gave me a lot of food for thought about what we're going to do to be able to draw people back into a shul.
I was moved that here you have somebody who did not grow up with Torah. She doesn't have a strong Jewish education. She has a lot of Jewish pride. Her parents, whom I've met, and I'm grateful. My mother's worked closely with them and gotten to know them well. They're wonderful, wonderful people. But she doesn't have a strong Jewish education, Jewish background. But it's amazing to see somebody at the top of their game. She's enormously accomplished, COO of Facebook, and yet she's, to quote her, leaning in on Jewish tradition, Jewish pride. She talks about the beauty of Judaism and the Jewish way of mourning and what that meant for her and what that did for her. She talked about the Shloshim. She talked about Rosh Hashanah being her favorite holiday. She talked about the values of tzedakah and philanthropy and honoring your father and mother. So it's a reminder to us that, you can reach the highest levels, if you would define at least corporate America, or if you talk about technology, in that way, reaching those levels, and yet being still true to traditional values and Torah's timeless values. The part, and I said and thanked her for this, but I remain very moved by it, even when we're watching it right now, is how real and sincere. Her husband died several years ago. She is engaged to be married again. And yet, when she almost said his name, when she said Dave, and she referred to him so lovingly as one of the greatest God took one of the greatest human beings on earth. The manner in which she left this world, and you can read about it in option B. She describes how she found him and had to go home and tell her children and so on and so forth. But just how real and genuine and how moved and how that grieving and mourning doesn't end just because you bury. And when you move to option B, you haven't put the other person in the rearview mirror, and you get engaged to get remarried. You haven't put that person in the rearview mirror. She still couldn't say his name without getting choked up. And I think that speaks volumes about her. That was very beautiful.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, we don't often recommend books, but if you haven't read the book Option B yet, you really should, because whether you've experienced tragedy in your own life, whether you have friends that are going through difficult times and you want to be a better friend towards them, there's an enormous amount of wisdom in the book. And again, as you and I have said in the introduction, both of us benefited it both in our personal lives and in our teaching, our ability to counsel other people. So if you have not yet read it, it's a really incredible book to read.
And we don't get any money. We don't get any. There was somebody who went through a loss, and I suggested, because I bought a case of them and I gave them out at a time to people who I thought would benefit from it. And there was somebody who afterwards shared with me what they had thought, and her answer was, give her more time. She wrote that book fairly quickly and close after she lost her husband. So maybe it needs more time to talk about resiliency. And that would have been an interesting question to ask her is, as time has gone on, would you write parts of the book differently? Do you have different insights based on the fact that more time has passed? So that would be an interesting follow-up question. So it may not speak to everybody, but I think, like you said, some of the ideas in it are universal and can or should speak to everybody.
Wow. Now that the show is aired, I wonder if it's going to blow up all over Facebook tomorrow. I see it everywhere. Our biggest show.
Could be. I forgot to friend her. Got to friend her and see what happens. Right. So the results are in on the survey that we sent out, and it was a perfect segue. The conversation we were having before we brought her on, and the conversation with her about the gift and the blessing of technology to be able to teach Torah and share, but what you lose by doing that and the energy that you have only when you go offline. So here are the survey results. Very interesting. 384 people responded, which is a small fraction of our community, but is a large amount, I think, to answer a survey. And out of that, 287 asked for the online stream drasha on Saturday night on Motzei Shabbos. 97 wanted it in-person Shabbos afternoon. So 74.7%, wow. 75% almost 75% exactly wanted it Saturday night streamed. Only 25% wanted it in person. And what I don't know, we could have asked more questions, but would have had fewer people respond. What I don't know is would the same people have responded the same in a non-COVID year? Was this a result of
So-
COVID, Delta threat, or was this, you know what? I want to make popcorn, sit in my gatkes on the couch, be doing 17 other things while I have you streaming in the background, and that's much more convenient. I don't know.
So that's my fear, and I feel very, very strongly about this. I understand Delta variant, there are legitimate concerns. I totally get it, and I'm very sensitive to it. I happen to have been talking to one of our colleagues, a rabbi in New Jersey, I'll leave it at that, who gave a shiur online, and he also gave an in-person option. He happens to be in a community, younger people, many people back in shul. The barrier was not fears about COVID. He gave the shiur online, and out of, I think, 77 people that attended, 3 were in person and the rest were online. 3 were in person. He called his shul president afterwards and he said, Amit, he said, I can't do Zoom anymore. He said, I didn't get into the rabbinate to be only online. I got into the rabbinate to be in a room with people, to be looking them in the eye, and to be growing together with them. I fear that we are giving into the convenience of technology. Again, obviously there are concerns about COVID. I'm not minimizing that for a second. I saw it in my own house. We had Rabbi Eli Mansour in our community last night. And it's a lot more convenient to watch at home. You can cook, you can do the dishes, you can do a lot of things while you're listening to a shiur. But, and this is the big but, people are missing out on something spectacularly special. And I know false humility, it's partially the Shabbos Shuvah drasha that you're giving, but if you've never been in Boca Raton Synagogue for a Shabbos Shuvah or a Shabbos Hagadol drasha, it is mesmerizing. It is a magical experience. Being in the room with a diverse group of people, all looking to grow and inspire each other, is something you simply cannot recreate online. And I was pained by those numbers because I feel bad. I feel like it's a loss of something in our community, and I wonder if we'll ever get it back. And I don't think many of the people who voted even know what they're losing out on. Again, the benefit is many more women who otherwise weren't ordinarily able to come. I get it, but there's something very special that we're losing out on.
When
I appreciate that passion. I agree. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying, what if you just don't stream it and it was in your force?
So that's what I was about to say. What I was about to say was, I agree with you. You spoke as convincingly, compellingly, enthusiastically at our planning meetings, maybe more than you did just now. You've convinced me, and I agree. And in future years, even if the majority, even if 90% would want it online, we're going back offline Shabbos afternoon. What changed now and what pushed me to do that poll was that the reason to do it offline is for our members. But if our own members say, I won't come unless X, Y, and Z, or I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel safe, I didn't want those who are not able to return yet to say to me, you've now excluded me. Now that you moved it to Shabbos afternoon, you've excluded me. And that's why this is still the exception. We're still in a pandemic. Numbers are still high. There are those still not coming back, even with a mask, who correctly are not yet coming back, who are vulnerable, high risk. And so I just don't want to exclude them. But when there's the opportunity where anyone who wants to could be there in person, it's just convenience keeping them online, I'm with you. I'm back in person only.
So again, I agree, and I want to be clear. I'm so sensitive. I get it. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. I just fear that in 2 years from now, you're going to see very similar results. You're going to see 75% of the people saying, I could sit in my pajamas in my living room. My wife and I can watch it together. And by the way, if I do that, then as she said, I can listen to anyone Shabbos Shuvah Drush around the country.
Right.
I can say, you know what, Goldberg, I've listened to you enough times. Now I want to hear, Rabbi X from Pittsburghville. I fear we're going to lose out and never come back to that magic of being in person. Yes, I said Pittsburghville online.
First of all, now you're going to be
Hang on,
sued
let me Google that for a second. I'm trying to
you're
find
going
out
to
where
be
that is.
sued by the people of Pittsburghville. The difference is that in the future, we're not taking a poll. In the future, we're not doing a survey. So this was not a, hey, we're really curious. Which way would you prefer? Let's do a survey. This was because of extenuating circumstances. So I agree with you. You've convinced us. And please, God, we look forward to Shabbos Shuvah Drasha being in person in Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh with no online option for it. So we look forward to that. Does that mean, Rabbi Moskowitz, that post-Sukkot, your very popular Thursday morning Tehillim class will only be in person?
So I was ready to go now already, but the feedback that we got was that most people want to attend online, either because of COVID, because of convenience. Some of our Snowbirds are still up north, and this is the first opportunity they've had to continue to learn with me, even when they're up north. To be quite honest, I'm hoping that changes after Yontif, but I don't know. If our Snowbirds are still up north and there's still a perceived fear and people aren't going to come in person, I'm probably going to continue online. But that pains me. I don't like teaching online. I want to be in a room with people. I gave a schmooze Thursday night. Thank God it was a very crowded room, and it was just different. I felt alive. I felt it was just a different TV. Not unsafe, of course. Everyone's safe. But it was just a different. It was a different teaching experience, and I love that, and I miss it. I crave it.
Can you tell if people are tuning in from Boca or if they're tuning in from out of town? Is it 50%?
Yeah, probably half from my class. Probably half from my class. But I'm staring at people's names, and again, right. I get it. Zoom is the best thing that ever happened, and COVID without Zoom and without Facebook Live would have been a totally different experience. But you're staring at people's names that you just can't compare it. And I yearn and I crave and I daven to come back to that.
This is a live show, and to hear Sheryl Sandberg's advice, let's get some interaction over here. Let's ask our viewers, we have a really nice, healthy audience watching live right now. In the comment section on YouTube, tell us what you think. If you're from Boca, do you want us going in person?
I just insulted the people of Pittsburgh.
We have our first resident of Pittsburgh who was insulted. You're gonna have to go on an apology tour. So far, we have to apologize to Xbox and Pittsburgh. So we are too. But take advantage. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to engage with you because Sheryl Sandberg told us that's what we're supposed to do. So write in the comments and tell us if you're from Boca. Do you want us going only in person? If you're not from Boca, when you hear us say that we're cutting off the online streaming teaching and it's going to be exclusively in person, how do you feel about that? What is the way of the future? What is the way of education in the future? Maybe we should just teach and record and people can listen later, but the live is only in person. Or maybe there's a hybrid model where we're teaching live and there's a hybrid model that we're streaming it simultaneously. It is unclear. It's a good question.
There was someone yesterday. I had a meeting on my calendar. So then someone texted me a few minutes before the meeting. They said, you forgot to send me a Zoom link. I said, a Zoom link? I'm just calling you on the phone. It's like a phone meeting. This is what we do. We don't have to get on Zoom to talk to each other.
Every time.
Every
time.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Whatever. Done with Zoom.
So let us know. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you would prefer, and let us know what your Uber rating is. You rate your drivers, but tell us what your drivers have rated you. What kind of passenger are you? How courteous are you? What do your drivers think of you? Is a good question. What else is going on, gentlemen?
Maybe one of our commenters, by the way, will get some behind the Bima swag in their mailbox soon.
Could be. Do you know the zip code in Pittsburgh though to send them?
I'm pretty sure we can send it to everyone in Pittsburgh.
How you gonna mail it to Pittsburgh? Yeah, you can have a hard time reaching it. You can have a hard time reaching. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll have to see. Yeah, our members are telling us in person, far more inspiring. There's an energy, there's an electricity in the room. People are engaged. You could teach and insist that people keep their video on. One person says. Pittsburgh is 60076. we now have the zip code, and we can send that. Swag. There's some concern. What about a blackout from Boca? So there are some concern. We should mention that we're thinking about the people of New Orleans who've been hammered by a hurricane and without power for weeks on end. We are thinking about the people of New Orleans. Rabbi Moskowitz, what do we as a community in Boca Raton have in store? How do we want to make a difference for the people of New Orleans? Tell our audience what we are working on.
We are working on a relief mission to New Orleans. I was on the phone for a long period of time today with our partners in the Orthodox Union to provide what I'll call a service learning opportunity, but it's really a relief mission to New Orleans to help people there, to really just help them unload their houses. A lot of stuff needs to get taken to the trash. If it's waterlogged, they just need help. They need manpower. It's physical labor. And please God, right after the Yom Tovim, you and I will be leading a relief mission to Rabbi Brody, by the way, you're coming with us. Forgot to tell you, we're leading a relief mission to New Orleans.
I'm in.
And we have some very special things in store. We've been speaking to some very big names of people who might join us to make it a special experience, a comforting experience for the community in New Orleans. And everyone's should stay tuned.
Looking forward to that. We've been talking about that, doing that kind of a thing. And, in our experience ourselves, I'm sure for those listening, you've had the same experience. When you devote yourself to helping people through a crisis, you get much more than you give. You get much more than you give. I'll never forget after one of the Lebanon wars and the rockets were coming to the north of Israel, and we impromptu put a mission together. We flew that week, and we were up north in Tzfat and other communities where bombs, rockets had fallen, trying to, again, clear out, help, paint, and do that kind of thing. And I remember going with Rabbi Simcha Friedman, Zichron Livracha of blessed memory, who probably is the one who inspired us to go and to do. You get much more than you give. So hopefully we'll put together a really nice group and we'll show up and we'll get a lot out of it in addition to hopefully having an impact there.
Do you guys even know that I spent 3 weeks in Houston after Hurricane Katrina with 2 colleagues from Yeshiva University. I was a Smicha student at the time, and the Federation of Houston, the New Orleans Federation had moved to Houston, and they had set up shop there, and they needed help. They needed bodies. They needed people to help answer phone and help with the relief efforts. And Rabbi Aryeh Lightstone, Eliza Abrams, and I, the 3 of us went for 3 weeks to Houston to help with the relief effort. And the things that we saw and the sights and the smell, I mean, I'll never forget that. It was unbelievable.
Where do you stay during a time like that? Or the hotel?
So again, there was in Houston, right? The New Orleans community had been displaced to Houston. So a lot of it was helping. There was an enormous amount of money that was raised. And it was just helping filter that money to the people that needed, working with local vendors, people who needed furniture, people who needed hotel places to stay. They were completely displaced. Right. And we would literally, take phone calls all day. Someone would say, I'm here. I don't have food for my table. I don't have a bed. I don't have a table. And we would literally work with local vendors and arrange that for them. In New Orleans, it's a little bit different. I spoke to some of our partners today. Hopefully the hotels will be they'll have power soon and they'll be able to host us. Can't guarantee anyone the Ritz-Carlton of New Orleans, but at least it'll be accommodations that we can handle. And but we're putting on the flyer. It's going to be hard work. It's morning to night of physical labor.
Hearing you describe that reminds me of the time that you worked in Dimona.
Wow, we're going to go there. Hindi Pupko. We ran a camp in Dimona for a summer. It was actually not Dimona. It was a neighboring town called Yerucham.
Yerucham, that's right, Yerucham. Right. We have a new entry here. Earlier tonight, Dr. Elliot Lassen had a 4.86 rating. He is a 4.86 rating, but Asher Sharf is a 4.9. The drivers have rated Asher a 4.9 rating. So Asher, be in touch with us. We're going to send you a little something unless somebody's got a higher. Brody, what are you?
9.3. Is that a real rating? 4.9 what?
4.90?
4.79.
He's 4.9 even. It's an amateur score, but he's a 4.9 even rating.
That's like a rookie score.
And you're 4.93?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 4.79.
4.79. Rabbi Moskowitz, you're going to have to
what happened? What happened, Rabbi Moskowitz? What happened in that ride?
A little more gentle when you close that back door. A little, Chef Gersh wants to know. Someone walk through where you find the rating. Open the Uber app. This is what Behind the Bima has become, by the way. Open the Uber app. Well, technology.
By the way, everyone wants to know Chef Gersh's Uber rating.
Yeah. You open the Uber app. There's 3 lines in the top left corner. Hit those 3 lines. And I'm embarrassed. I'm a 4.8.
All right, I just gotta chime in here. I'm already getting the text messages. I'm so sensitive to people who are concerned about COVID. I know that the ICUs and the ventilators are being used up locally. I didn't mean to disparage anyone who is concerned about COVID. I totally understand it. I guess my point was that I just fear that it's the beginning of a trend that will lead to more online learning and that we will lose something special along the way.
You're talking post-COVID, of course. During COVID, everyone knows that you care as much as anyone else. We're talking post-COVID, its impact. This just in, my daughter Atara is a 4.89, which is pretty shocking that she has a higher rating. She's been on like 3 Uber rides.
Chef Gersh has no rating.
Chef Gersh is not rated. Chef.
Have you taken a ride in Uber yet?
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you why. First of all, Chef Gersh is a 5-star chef, but that's because he's always the one giving the ride to people. He's so kind and generous and shows up to help people and to give rides to them. So, Chef, you get a 5-star rating on driving people around. You are a good man. We appreciate that very, very much.
Rabbi Goldberg, what are you thinking about for Shabbat Shuvah? We've been speaking a lot about Shabbat Shuvah. We haven't gotten to the topic. We haven't spoken about the butterflies. Walk us through, take us behind the Bima. How do you choose a topic? How do you prepare for the topic? How many hours do you spend on the 90 pages of source sheets that you are going to deliver to us next Shabbos in Mirz Hashem?
In record time.
Interesting. And this is our last Behind the Bima. This is the last few minutes until after Sukkot, because we had a 4-part mini series now. By the way, if you have not listened, you got to go back. If you're still with us tonight, if you're listening whenever on your podcast player on YouTube, you got to go back and hear Yosef Mendelovich. You got to hear Mariana Rivera. You got to hear Rav Moshe Weinberger. By the way, continue. I didn't even tell you. Somebody listened to last week and sent me a long email with some questions for Rav Weinberger. Asked me my opinion about how do you understand? Aren't we supposed to be afraid? He spoke about feeling Hashem's love, not the scary courtroom depiction. So I messaged Rav Weinberger, and he left me a 5-minute impassioned message back, really, doubling down on his view that fear is not what's going to inspire people in our generation. It's feeling Hashem's love, which is really, really important. So if you have not listened, you got to go listen. And of course, Sheryl Sandberg tonight as well. So listen, rate, review, get the word out, help us climb that chart. And not for us, we have full-time jobs. We feel pretty good, but to help get their lessons, their teachings, get more people to be able to hear what they have to say. Ariel Gross is claiming to be a 5.0. That is a 5.0.
I want to see a picture of that. I've never seen that before. That's
a perfect MCAT score. We're going to need to see a picture of that. We're going to need some verification. So Rabbi Moskowitz, you asked me Shabbat Shuvah, because we're not going to be having another show before Shabbat Shuvah. It's a good question. Early in my career, early in the rabbinate, I gave more typical Shabbat Shuvah drushas, which was to take a piece of the davening to explore an area of halacha, and of the late, for the last several years instead, I've been kind of whatever I'm thinking about, whatever's on my mind, whatever I'm working on, what's resonating for me, I assume will be relevant and will be on other people's minds as well. So we've talked about being the best version of yourself, and we've talked about, you are what you do, and we've talked about, I don't know what else have we talked about the last few years. We talked about taking extreme ownership. What's your mission in life? All these kinds of topics which weave together Torah sources with some of the contemporary philosophy, motivation, self-help, and to put it all together, hopefully in a way which a person walks out saying, I want to make some changes. I want to grow. I want this to be a different year. Maybe I want this to be the year. So I was thinking a lot about habits and the lives that we lead, and what predicts what our future will be. And I was reading a book called Atomic Habits. It's an amazing book, Atomic Habits. It's really an excellent book. A lot of theory and a lot of science about how habits are formed, how they can be changed, how we can overcome them. And taking a lot of that and weaving together our ancient Torah. There's nothing new in the modern genre. It's simply putting and packaging in different vocabulary, different language, what Torah always taught us. And so that's what I try to do in these drushes, is take articles. So I'll just give a little teaser. I'm beginning with this tension or the dichotomy between, on the one hand, we have decision fatigue. It's a lot of articles. We have a lot of experiences ourselves. Certainly, Yom Noraim, we trying to organize community, have enormous decision fatigue. We're worn out. We're beaten down. We're tired of making decisions. Parents, a lot of articles are talking about parents having enormous decision fatigue with their children. What do you let your children do? What do they not do? What should the policies be? We're exhausted, decision fatigue. We're making so many decisions, high stakes decisions. It's just, we're exhausted. So on the one hand, there's decision fatigue. And on the other hand, we're creatures of habit. There's so much science that says that so much of our day has been predetermined by the wiring of our brain, by the habits we've formed, by our nurture and our nature, that there are actually very few decisions we actually make. We are just on autopilot from all that's been pre-programmed. So which one of those is true? And how do we balance? And how do we break through? How does this become our breakthrough year in whatever area? You want it to be your breakthrough year in Emunah, Dvekas, connecting and attaching yourself to God. You want this to be your breakthrough year on exercise and health and sleep and well-being. We had a 4-part series on that here at BRS this Elul. The 4th part, Rabbi Blumenthal will be teaching soon. Make sure to still catch it. So maybe your breakthrough year is going to be learning. Daf Yomi made a siyum today on Sukkah. Start the daf. Tomorrow is a perfect day. Challenge yourself. Start learning. Beitza, brand new Masechta. You're going to bang out, knock out a few Masechtas very quickly right now. It's a great opportunity. Whatever your breakthrough year, how do we resolve the decision fatigue on the one hand, autopilot and momentum rote on the other? How do we break out from both of those to make this our breakout and breakthrough year to make some real changes in our lives? That's hopefully what we're going to talk about.
Wow. Excited.
I'll be there.
Avi's
a 4.95. Marvin's a 4.96. Those are both impressive, but they're not a 5.0. So 5.0 is basically
what they're all showing me is apparently I'm not a nice person. That's what they're showing me. 4.79.
4.79. I told you, you got to close the door gently. Don't slam the door. Yeah. Don't slam the door.
My drivers must be from Patsutsville and are all insulted at me right now.
That's very, very possible. It's very possible. There's a high correlation between being from Patsutsville and driving Ubers. So That's definitely very possible. Rabbis, gentlemen, friends, any closing thoughts on this 4-part mini-series as we lock down this little mini season of Behind the Bima? Our audience will not believe what we have in store for them after Sukkot, the guests that we have, and the conversations that we look to have. And we're really excited. Behind the Bima has yet to spend one penny on guests. We do not spend money on guests. The sponsorship of Behind the Bima goes all to support Boca Raton Synagogue, the Torah classes, the program, the learning, the helping people. None of it goes to us personally, and none of it goes to guests. It all goes to helping support and promote the efforts of BRS. So as we lock down this little mini season of Behind the Bima, a great mini season with 4 incredible guests everyone should listen to. Closing thoughts. I bought you some time there, by the way.
I
just want to say, it's been a year of enormous ups and downs, and moments where we thought we were done with this pandemic, and then getting drawn back into this pandemic, and political strife in the country, and vitriol, the different sides, the mask issue, and there've really been some really amazing moments this year, and some moments where it's been very challenging for us as a community, personally, as a country. And I just want to say, I really enjoy spending every Wednesday night with the 3 of you and with our audience. And I just want to wish everyone a happy, healthy new year. And it's a year of bracha and mazel and nachas and parnasa for us and for our entire viewership. And please God, we should be zochet to record Behind the Bima in Yerushalayim, Yera Kodesh.
Amen. I love that. Rabbi Brody.
So amazing. I just want to echo everything that Rabbi Moskowitz just said, but also I'm just really pumped for another year. I think it's going to be a big one, and I'm excited. I think things are going to get a lot better.
There's no question about it. This just in, by the way, I now have a picture. I have been sent a picture of Ariel Uber rating. Ariel has taken 28 Uber rides. Ariel Gross of BRS West, our satellite Boca Raton Synagogue West. Ariel's taken 28 Uber rides, and he has a 5.0. So, Ariel, you're a gift to our community.
We've got to interview him.
You are a gift to our community, and you will be receiving a gift from Behind the Bima. I'll tell you my closing thought as we close. Rabbi Victor Miller, I think, had a great point, which I reserve the right to use in shul over the next few days or weeks. And he said that, at the end of the year, everyone's very focused on Rosh Hashanah about what we're going to ask for the year ahead. We want good health, and we want income and livelihood, and we want our children to be healthy, and we want nachas from our children, and we want all these wonderful things, please God, exciting things in our life. Everyone's focused on what we want for the year ahead. Don't forget to stop and say thank you for the year that was. Don't forget to say stop. Because you know what? Many people this past year had their prayers from last Rosh Hashanah answered.
Right.
When many weren't healthy, many remained healthy. When many struggled financially, others were financially prosperous. When many longed for a simcha, others celebrated simcha. So let's all focus not only on what we long for and want.
They say that's the shechianu that we make on Rosh Hashanah night, is gratitude for the previous year, for the fact that we're here, that we made it, and that,
Yeah, and we're grateful to be together. So big thank you to Sheryl Sandberg, Chief Operating Officer of Facebook. Truth is, we're not thankful to her at all. She did not come of her own volition. She was held hostage by her parents. So
she made it very clear.
She made it very clear. I want to thank her wonderful parents who do phenomenal work. I don't know if they're watching the episode to the end, but they do amazing work. They are great philanthropists. They're great leaders in the Florida community and for United Hatzalah. And so thank you for enabling and arranging the conversation that we had with Sheryl. And I'm grateful. Among the things I'm grateful for are the 2 of you. People who've been watching this now know that the 3 of us are not only colleagues, we are the closest of friends. And I'd say more than that, we're brothers. It's the name of our WhatsApp group. We're brothers. And I feel that. And among the things I'm incredibly grateful, one of the gifts of Corona that we've taken away are Wednesday nights, sharing it with the 2 of you, having fun, laughing at ourselves, laughing at life, taking life seriously, learning from one another. And so I am very, very grateful. And on that note, we'll close out wishing everybody healthy, happy, ksiva, chesima tova. We should be signed and sealed for a good year. God should answer all of our prayers for the good. May you spend the rest of this year and begin next year staying happy, healthy, and stay home.